The Cloward-Piven strategy ultimately only serves to give even more dominance to the establishment and pilfer even more freedom from the masses.
We're going to talk about the Cloward-Piven strategy, right? And how it has been used to destroy the United States over the last 5 decades, if not more. I think really that it started back in 1934, I think. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments, whenever Social Security got started. Now, I understand some people are going to say Social Security is something that we paid into. Yes, 100%. Do you deserve to get paid that money? 100%. Yes, I want to get paid my Social Security when I turn, 62, because I'm going to take it out as soon as I possibly can. Yes, 100%. But why did they institute it, ladies and gentlemen? Why did they institute Social Security? That's the question. The question is not whether you deserve it or not, because it is a benefit, something that you paid into so that you can gain from it later on in life. It is a benefit, not an entitlement. But why did they institute that law? Right? Why did they pass that into law? Was it really because they wanted to take care of the elderly? Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you what. Do you really think that an elder person nowadays can really live on Social Security? And when I say live, I mean live. All right? I don't mean exist. I mean live. All right? So just think about that. Why did they implement Social Security? So I'm pretty much going to read this for you all, but I do have some areas that are highlighted that I want to go ahead and expand on. And I'm going to start here where it says the article outline. It says here, the article outlined a strategy. All right, so the Cloward-Piven strategy is named after a gentleman and a lady, all right, that came up with this strategy on how a system can be overwhelmed into failure. Right, it can be overwhelmed where its riches can run out, where the spigot is no longer producing any water per se. And I was thinking, how can I explain how this strategy works very, very simply? And the way I came up with is this. I have a 1,000-gallon water tank under my house, and I'm the one that's in charge of filling that tank with water and keeping it full. So let's say, for example, that it is my labor that keeps that tank full of water. Right. So obviously I live with Little Miss Alaska Prepper and Mrs. Alaska Prepper, and they partly consume that water. I do too, but they partly consume that water. So as well as the dogs and the cat, right? But you know what I mean. So they're not really thinking about, and I'm just using this as an example, right? Let's say they're not really thinking about where that water is coming from. They just know that the water is there. And they take it for granted that that water is always going to be there. They're always going to be taking water out and taking water out. Well, what happens when I can no longer get water? What happens if I can no longer afford to get water? What happens if my truck breaks down and I cannot get water? What happens if I just have a bad attitude and say, I'm not getting water for another week or two? The water will eventually run out. And why is that? Because the system that's in place, it got used to the point where there was not enough input for the output that was being taken out. So the Cloward-Piven strategy would be something like, it's not only my wife and my daughter that are taking water out of that tank, all right, but there's so many people dependent on that water, on that limited amount of water. There's so many people dependent on it that they're taking it out faster than what I can actually go to the water station and fill it in. All right, that is a strategy that they've been using for decades in order to make America into what I would call a two-class or a two-tier society, one of the haves and one of the have-nots. And ladies and gentlemen, just look around. I hope that after I do this short reading for you, that you'll come to the realization that that is what's been happening here for the past several decades. The outlined strategy to overload the system and create so much poverty that the United States will become a social welfare state with economic and political power concentrated at the top, with far fewer freedoms than we enjoy today. Now, I'm not sure about you, but to me, just that sentence alone pretty much tells me everything. He goes on to say, theoretically, according to the doctrine, a condition of overwhelming tension and strain could be engineered through the overloading of American welfare rolls. Get that, ladies and gentlemen? American welfare rolls. Now, I'm not here to say that if anyone is on any kind of public assistance, that you're evil, because like I say, I can acknowledge why it is that most people are on public assistance. Whose fault is it? I know that some people, it would be valid to say that they're just lazy. They don't want to work. But I would say that most people, is because of the position that they're in, because of the policies, laws, and regulations that our government has imposed on us. Just look at the last 2 years. How many people lost their business? How many people lost their house? How many people are living, paycheck to paycheck? How many people are wondering if they're going to be able to feed their children? Look at how many people have to go and look for help in food banks now, whereas years ago they did not have to. So you overload the welfare rolls to where the government can no longer provide that assistance. And then, all right, the government is going to come out with a solution. And what will that solution be? What has every solution that government has ever laid out, in the middle, the beginning, or the end of a crisis, what has it ever done? It has taken away more of our liberties. And that's what they're looking for here. The implosion of the welfare benefits would facilitate a massive spike in poverty and desperation, creating a financial crisis that would lead to an even greater cycle of demand for a fully socialized system. How many people were out there in the last 2 years hoping for and asking for their stimulus, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, we had a couple of years where this actually played out, in a small part. And right there, people demand a fully socialized system. How many people are asking for universal basic income? This desperation would then force the federal government to concentrate all welfare programs under one roof. Whose roof? Of course, it wouldn't be an independent organization. It would be under the roof of the federal government. Now, some people nowadays would say, well, we already live in a socialist state. It's socialist for the corporations and it's capitalist for the common folk. And what I mean by that is that the government does not have your back. When you lose, you lose. And guess what? That's the way it ought to be. When you lose, you lose. But it ought to be that way for everyone. All right, ladies and gentlemen. And they are encroaching their socialist policies upon us by making more and more, programs that make the people dependent on the government. When I lived in Washington, we had a friend that lived next door, well, 2 doors down from us, or 2 houses down from us. And she used to work, I don't know if she still does, but she used to work for the state of Washington. And her job, or part of her job, was to solicit people that were not on benefits or entitlements and try to encourage them to get on entitlements. So the state was actually soliciting people, trying to get them on entitlements, telling them, hey, you qualify for this. Why don't you go ahead and apply for it so you can have extra money? That was part of her job. Cloward-Piven claimed that this could be accomplished at a grassroots level through community activism, and that it would facilitate a more compassionate federal authority. However, there are numerous problems with these assertions. The Cloward-Piven strategy has nothing to do with grassroots activism and accomplishes nothing tangible for the downtrodden poverty class, and that is a fact. In fact, I would dare to say that the Cloward-Piven, as well as most social engineers, are well aware that the concept ultimately only serves to give even more dominance to the establishment and pilfer even more freedom from the masses. And that's exactly what it does, ladies and gentlemen. When the system is overloaded and the government can no longer give to the people what it was taking away from someone else, because there's just no more rich people to take money from to give to everyone else, then the government will come up with a solution. And that solution will resolve in you losing more of your liberties and the government getting even stronger. Cloward-Piven is not limited to the destabilization of state and local welfare programs. it can easily be used against federal level entitlements, and in reality is much more effective against an entity with the proven tendency towards exponential debt spending. Their debt, they can just keep making debt. Whereas like a state, let's say that we were implementing this program at the state level, the state cannot print their own money. So this really cannot bring them down, just like it can bring down the federal government, because the federal government can continue to print money. And they go on over here towards the end of this paragraph, I believe, and tell you why. Though the federal government may be able to borrow fiat dollars through the Federal Reserve to prolong welfare rolls while the states cannot, a more volatile threat arises when debt monetization begins to wear down the purchasing power of the currency. And isn't that what's happening at a faster rate right now, ladies and gentlemen? He's talking about what most people think inflation is. Prices going up, your dollars going less far than what they used to, or you having to work more hours to be able to buy the same amount of stuff that you were able to buy previously. Weakened purchasing power results in reduced consumer activity, less industrial growth, less GDP, and obviously more poverty. The dollar has lost, listen to this, the dollar has lost approximately 98% of its purchasing power since 1972, less than 1 year after Nixon took us off of the Bretton Woods standard, which is the standard where the dollar was backed up by 40% gold. And after 50 years of the so-called war on poverty. I did a video on this here a while back where I showed that the war on poverty, which I think it started in 64 or something like that. And this writing here is probably about 5 or 6 years old. But the war on poverty, I think, started like in 64 or 65, something like that. And there's more people in the poverty rolls today than there were before they started the war on poverty. Why is that, ladies and gentlemen? 33% of the American population now are either on the edge of poverty or under the edge of poverty. And I would say that it's even more today, because like I said, this publication here is about 5 or 6 years old. All right, let's finish it off. In the past decade alone, the number of people dependent on food stamps and EBT for their survival in the U.S. has doubled from 25 million to nearly 50 million. I think it went a little bit down, but it's probably getting close to that again. I think last time I checked, I think it was like 42 million or so, something like that. Americans on Social Security do not consider themselves welfare recipients, and they're not, all right, because they paid into the system. However, the point remains, and this is what you have to look at, all right? The point remains that if the federal money tap shuts down due to overwhelming participation, the checks will stop whether you paid into the system or not. Now, I would disagree with this just a little bit. I don't think that the checks will ever stop. The checks will continue to come. It's just like Alan Greenspan said in an interview or in a congressional interview or whatever it is a long time ago. Alan Greenspan used to be one of the chairmen of the Federal Reserve. I don't know, but like 3 or 4 back. He said that the government will never default on paying Social Security, but that the government cannot guarantee what the dollars that it pays you for Social Security will be able to purchase for you.
And we can guarantee cash benefits as far out and at whatever size you like, but we cannot guarantee their purchasing power. But we cannot guarantee their purchasing power. But we cannot guarantee their purchasing power.
All right, so pretty much purchasing power is going to go down. So in my opinion, the government will never default. They'll just print and print and print, and the value of your purchasing power will continue to go down and down. In the end, it is the federal government itself that is most vulnerable to the Cloward-Piven strategy. And I believe the goal is to set fire to all social structures in the U.S., then assimilate them into a new globalist system. Now listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. The tactic of overwhelming the welfare structure requires the complicity of the government itself. A grassroots activist movement cannot and will never compel federal and state governments to expand welfare initiatives if they do not wish to do so. That is why I say you can protest all you want as long as you pay your taxes. If welfare programs are not expanded beyond their capacity to be maintained, they cannot be overwhelmed. So what they're saying there is that if Congress stopped expanding the capacity for welfare programs, or if they stopped expanding welfare programs, then they could not be overwhelmed because they stopped expanding it. But they continue to expand it. They continue to want to give, universal income. They continue to want to give free healthcare to everyone, free college to everyone. Let's see. Therefore, government must cooperate with the Cloward-Piven strategy by generating more and more welfare programs to the exploited. That is to say, the elitists who control our government, regardless of their claimed political party, right? Let me say that again. Regardless of their claimed political party, must want to arrange circumstances to allow for this strategy to be successful. We are getting closer and closer to that wall. This train is getting closer and closer to that wall. And it's not going to end well either way. Like I said, it's going to end in a crash, all right, where a lot of people are going to suffer, right? But in the end, if it doesn't end in a crash, it's going to end where the government is going to be so powerful that you will have wished that it would have ended in a crash. Because eventually, ladies and gentlemen, the government will run out of other people's money. If anyone can tell me one thing that the government produces, and when people say that they want the government to give them this or give them that, the government does not produce, ladies and gentlemen. They don't make anything. No, I have to disagree with you, Jose. Jose says the government makes money. That's the one thing that they make is money. They can print as much of it as they want. Every government around the world is going. So, Jose, the government does not make money. Is this money? Is this money? See, the government doesn't make money. This is fiat currency. And the one job of fiat currency is to steal your wealth. This is fiat currency. This is not money. All right, please understand this, ladies and gentlemen. This is not money. All right, money is something that has tangible value, that has actual tangible, meaning what? Meaning that it can be used for something. It doesn't have to be. Do I have a silver coin here? It doesn't have to be a silver coin. It can pretty much be anything. Throughout history, it's been a lot of things. It's been seashells, but then seashells stop being used. Why? Because there's so many of them, and if there's so many of something, it has a lot less value. So no, this is not money at all. This is just a tool that the government uses to steal your wealth, to steal your time, to steal your seconds, your minutes, and your hours. Because the more of this that they print, the more of your time that it takes for you to buy the same thing today that it took for you to buy it 5 years ago. Okay, so this is not money, right? And they don't make money at all. So like I said, anyone out there, let me know what the government makes that has any value whatsoever. I want to go ahead and talk about this example really quick. I've gone over it before, but just in case there are some of you here that are new or haven't heard me say it, this is how I want you to think about this right here. All right. This is how I want you to think about it. So for example, not even an example, this is actual. A few years back, the average salary and wage in the United States was like $20 and change an hour. So we'll put it at $20 an hour. And at that same time, it was like $7 a pound, but I'm just going to say $10 a pound to make it easy. At that same time, it cost about $10 a pound to buy a pound of ribeye. So that means that if you were making $20 an hour and a pound of ribeye cost $10, it means that back then it cost you half an hour of your labor to purchase 1 pound of ribeye. Fast forward to 2021, because I remember doing this last year, the average wage in the US was about $30 an hour, $30 and change. So it was $30 an hour. But a pound of ribeye had gone up from $10 a pound to about $18 or $19 a pound. So we'll just call it 20, right? We'll call it 20. We round it up to 7 or 8 to 10, and we'll round up the 18 or 19 to 20. So now you're making 50% more than what you were when you could buy a pound of ribeye for a half an hour of your labor. But now, since you're making $30 and a pound of ribeye is $20, now it's costing you 40 minutes of your labor to buy that same pound of ribeye. So although it looks like you're wealthier because you're making more currency, you're really not, because it's costing you more of your labor, more of your time to buy that same product. That is why the more that the government prints of this, the more that it will cost you in time to live. That again, thank you very much for joining in. Remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place. And you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. I'm Alaska Prepper, and I'm out. Bless you guys. Have a great week.